Hello once again, it's Matthew here from MatthewNorthMusic. Thanks for watching this video, and as ever, if you've not seen any of my videos before and you're interested in the sort of stuff I make, be it about music, electronics or something in between, then please think about subscribing to the channel. It's completely free, and if you click the little bell icon then you'll be notified next time there's a video. And also with this series there's also a playlist, so if you missed one of them you can either just look back or you can just go to the playlist and see all of them from the beginning. Anyway, 1984, the greatest year in pop, ? Well, this month there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of great releases, lots of things going on TV as well and on the radio in this month. And when it comes to singles, there's a lot of real big hitters came out in this month. And I'm going to whiz through the single releases. So in the first week, we had Assassin by Marillion. Followed by Breakdance Party by Break Machine. Again, not a big hit for them, but it was still, you know, quite an important song in that whole sort of breakdance thing that was happening. In at 80 was Romancing the Stone by Eddie Grant. Now, this was a song from a film called Romancing the Stone. Now, it was originally meant to be the theme tune, but it never got to be the theme tune. It was just used as incidental music in the film. And it was directed by Robert Zemeckis. I think I pronounced that probably wrong. But anyway, the film was destined to be a total flop, but as it turned out, it actually became a hit. And because the film was a hit, Robert Zemeckis was then able to direct his next film, which was a little-known film called Back to the Future. So had this film not been a hit, we might never have got Back to the Future. And in at number 96, now this is a song I really liked at the time, but it was another flop. And it was one of the last singles, if not the last single, I think, by Musical Youth. And it was called She's Trouble. Now, She's Trouble had a bit of a history because it was actually a song that was originally recorded by Michael Jackson for Thriller, but it was ultimately not used and shelved, and eventually Musical Youth did a version of it, but it never really got anywhere. I always remember first seeing the video of that on I'm pretty sure it was a program called Free Time, presented by Mick Robertson. That was certainly the program I first saw Musical Youth on, because they were on that before they were on Blue Peter. But I think that on that episode they actually showed the video, or it may have been on an episode of Razzmatazz. I'm not sure, but it was definitely on ITV and not the BBC that I first saw it. And when it comes to LPs in the first week, well, we had Ocean Rains by Echo and the Bunnymen, which is, I think, their most classic album. Junk Culture by OMD came out, and I always remember the weekend that this was released because WH Smith's had a load of promotional OMD carrier bags. So if you buy anything in there, you got a Junk Culture carrier bag, and I remember having one of those. I wish I still had it now, but I don't. The Top by The Cure also came out in this week. That entered the charts at number 10. And incidentally, Ocean Rain entered the charts at number 4 and Junk Culture at number 9. At number 13 is an album that I do like a lot, but I can't actually show you all of the cover. And that's this, The Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking by Roger Waters. As I mentioned last month, I think it was David Gilmour's About Face album came out, and then Roger Waters followed it. And then in the charts at 99 is the compilation album Vengeance by New Model Army, which was a collection of their pre-signing to EMI singles. And it's actually, as an album, it flows quite well. It's a good record. Now, in the second week, we had Dancing with Tears in My Eyes by Ultravox. That entered the charts number 29. One behind it was one of the last singles by Status Quo before they announced they were splitting up, and that's Going Downtown Tonight. And as we all know, they didn't split up for very long. And then Panama by Van Halen entered the charts at 61. And I think when you think of Van Halen's 1984 album, if you're a pop fan, then you love Jump. But if you are more of a fan of the band's hard rock output, then the two songs that really stuck out on that album were Panama and Hot for Teacher, both released as singles. But then at 81, which became a hit, was Sister Sledge's Thinking of You. And at 85 was Spirit Walker by The Cult. And that obviously went up the chart. So I don't think it was a big hit, but if you go to a Cult concert, Spirit Walker is always one of the absolute high points of the concert. Now, as for albums, well, I'm going to go backwards to forwards. So, at 79, the compilation album Love You Till Tuesday by David Bowie came out. Now, the reason this album came out is that Channel 5 Video had released a video version of Bowie's Love You Till Tuesday film. And so Decca decided to put out an album of the soundtrack of the film, plus some other regular sort of DRAM era Bowie tracks. Mirror Move by the Psychedelic Furs entered the album charts at 15. Man on the Line by Krista Berg entered at 13. At number 3 was this album, Hysteria by the Human League. Now, I don't have this on vinyl, but I've had this cassette forever, although I've had new boxes for it several times. And this is actually probably the Human League album I personally have listened to more than any other album, even more than Dare or Unlimited Orchestra. But right in at number 1 is an album I briefly mentioned last month, and that's this, Legend by Bob Marley. Now, this is probably the greatest, it's certainly the biggest selling compilation album by an artist, I think, of all time. I think only the Eagles' greatest hits possibly has sold more than this. But, you know, this sold 3.5 million copies in the UK. Now, that's a lot of records in one country. And when you think now, you can get a number 1 album for selling maybe as little as 20 or 30,000 albums. So to sell this 3.5 million or whatever it was, it is quite extraordinary. And you know, everything about this record really sort of shows class. It's got that fantastic photo of Bob on the cover. I think that is the greatest photo of Bob Marley ever taken. It's a nice gatefold sleeve. It's got plenty to look at on the inside. There's all these sort of various photos and album covers and stuff. You've got a nice load of sleeve notes on there. And even on the back, you've got a different photograph to go with each track. Now, Island Records, I think, did a really good job with this, because when Bob died in 81, they could have just slung out any compilation album. But a lot of thought went into this album. And some people criticise it for not having more of Bob's sort of political songs on here. But, you know, Redemption Songs is on there, but you know, it's certainly a more poppy commercial album. And by also remixing a number of the tracks and give them a more modern feel, it felt very of the time and very contemporary. But, you know, they got the track listing right. I mean, all the real big hits are on here. You know, No Woman, No Cry, Could You Be Loved, Three Little Birds, Buffalo Soldier, I Shot the Sheriff, Waiting in Vain. One Love, obviously, was the first single from this album, originally, I think, on the Exodus album, but then got released in its own right. And Exodus itself is on here, Jamming, I mean, Waiting in Vain. You know, it is a brilliant compilation, but anyone watching this video, you've probably got a copy of this, so you know what a great record it is. But, you know, it was certainly the first reggae album I ever owned. It was probably the first reggae music I ever really heard. And I think the One Love single really helped make this a big album. And what made the One Love single so good was Don Letts' absolutely brilliant video that went with it, with all those different cameos of different people that were in it. You know, Paul McCartney, Musical Youth, you know, loads of other people. Although I would like to know, there are 2 people in that video. There's one person who looks a bit like Alana Curry from the Thompson Twins, but I'm not sure it is Alana Curry. And there's another guy in the video, and I always believed it was the actor Brian Murphy who played George in George and Mildred. But looking on the internet, it doesn't seem to be him. And I actually watched the video earlier on because there's a high def version on YouTube. And I watched it and I thought, no, I don't think it is him. So I would love to know who those 2 people are. So if anyone knows, that'd be great. It'd be good if, because again, I can't find it on the internet, but you'd think Wikipedia or somewhere would have a list of everyone that appears in that video, but yet to see that. But anyway, that was a massive, massive album. Now, when it comes to the 3rd week of May 1984, well, this is almost a great pop compilation on its own, just the singles that were released. And again, I'm going to go backwards on this. So at number 92, we had this record here, which is Murder by New Order. Not one of their biggest singles, but you know, it is a decent record, and obviously I've got it on 12-inch. And then we've got Breakdance by Irene Cara at 88. Again, not a huge hit, but you know, Irene Cara was great. You know, no, I always liked her singing. 87, Dance on Me, Carol Kenyon. Again, I'm not sure that became a big hit or not. Now, at 86 is probably the most divisive, not controversial, but it's a record most people hate from 1984. And it's Agadoo by Black Lace. Now, when I was looking up the charts website, what was interesting, it went in the charts at 86 and then it went down in the charts. So it was a bit of a slow burn before that became the annoying, massive hit that it was. But at 84, another, I suppose you could say, one-hit wonder was Love and Pride by King, obviously fronted by Paul King, who obviously went on to become an MTV presenter. And I think the sad thing about King was they were one of these bands, they did a lot of touring and they played a lot of places. And I know someone that went to see them when they played in Torquay at the 400 Club and said it was a really great gig. But ultimately, they had that one massive hit and then, you know, that was it, really. Now, McFadden and Whitehead's Ain't No Stopping and entered at 81. Again, that went on to become a big hit. And at 71, going into the charts, was a very early song of one of my most favourite artists, Lloyd Cole, Perfect Skin. Again, great record, you know, and that whole album, Rattlesnakes, is an absolute classic of singer-songwriting, British singer-songwriting. At 65, The Art Company's Susanna entered the charts. And at 63, Rough Justice by Bananarama. Now, 49, Sad Songs Mean So Much by Elton John. Again, really good song, really like that song. And at 45, his old mate Rod Stewart with Infatuation from the Camouflage album. I think it's called Camouflage. That was another really decent, solid Rod Stewart song, you know. It was actually a bit of a rocker rather than his, you know, I think Baby Jane was also, maybe that was in 83, but Infatuation was certainly a good rocker. Now, at number 34 is this, which is another absolute solid classic, Dancing in the Dark by Bruce Springsteen. Now, this song went on to become his biggest selling single of all time. And of course the B-side is Pink Cadillac, which again is a live favourite from Bruce, but it also became a big hit for Natalie Cole in about 88, I think it was. And then we got, in fact I haven't got the cover with me here, I'd have shown it to you, but you can look it up, and that's Pearl in the Shell by Howard Jones. That into the charts at number 25. And at number 11 was the Style Council's You're the Best Thing, which I think is probably their biggest song, or certainly the one that you probably associate with them the most. Although the record was actually called Grooving, and it was like a double A side with a song called Big Boss Groove on the other side. But it's You're the Best Thing is definitely the song that people knew the best. And then in at number 4, but it wasn't long before it went to number 1, was this, Wake Me Up Before You Go Go by Wham. Now, I always remember at the time, because obviously I loved the Fantastic album, I thought that was brilliant. You know, some of those songs were really funky and quiet. And when this came out, I kind of thought it just felt a little bit lightweight. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't Wham rap and it wasn't Young Guns. But then Club Tropicana had been the previous single to that. And again, that was, you know, that wasn't as, you know, as rocky as the others. So, and I kind of did think, they're going to go down a bit more softer direction or not. But in the end, you grow to love these songs. And, you know, Wake Me Up Before You Go Go is a song that I play when I do my 80s DJ sets, always, because it always goes down really well. Now, as for albums in this week, only one album really of note came out, and that's this, Monge 2 by Blancmange. Now, this is the second album by Blancmange, and to me, this is the best album they made with the original lineup. You know, it's got loads of great songs on here. Games Above My Head, Blind Vision, That's Love That Is, Murder. I never really liked their version of The Day Before You Came, but then I don't really like that song anyway. And Don't Tell Me, I mean, that's a classic song. But again, with the ABBA song, I mean, Neil's a massive fan of that song, and they still play that live today, and people still like it. In fact, in a way, I think the way they do it live now, which is a bit more stripped back to the version that's on there and how they were playing it live at the time, probably does work a bit better. But yeah, Monge 2 is a great record. Now, as for singles in the fourth and last week, well, there's loads. The highest new entry is this one, which is Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now by the Smiths. Now, when I bought this, I certainly didn't buy this when it came out. I don't think I'd really started buying Smiths records at that point. I think I started buying them a bit later in the year, and I certainly waited quite often to find them when they became second-hand, because one of the things that I used to do when I was a kid was my parents used to always go to Bournemouth on holiday in the autumn, and I used to go around all the second-hand record shops, and it was amazing that records that weren't that old were already in record shops, because people buy singles and 12 inches or whatever, but then they'd want to buy the next latest thing, so they'd take a load of records down to the record shop, shop them in, and then they go out and buy the latest thing. So yeah, I picked this up second hand, probably in 1984, but a bit later on than when it came out. Now, other songs that came out this week, or David Sylvian's Red Guitar, that's a great tune. So Tired by Ozzy Osbourne entered at 29. Now, So Tired was probably Ozzy's first ballad, and ballads have always been very good for Ozzy because they always chart very well. And that Mama I'm Coming Home, which he did much more recently. Well, I say recently, it's probably over 20 years ago now. Again, another great song, and I really like So Tired. I thought that was a really good song. Madness Is One Better Day into the charts at 30, but then at 35, a brand new band from Scotland but relocated to London, Bronski Beat, Small Town Boy, and obviously that zoomed right the way up the charts, and it's not just an iconic song of the 80s. It's not also an iconic song of what it stood for, but it is just a great song. It's a fantastic record, and Bronski Beat was so brave by not miming when they did it on Top of the Pops the first time. I think the keyboards were probably mimed, but Jimmy's voice was completely live, and it wasn't the greatest mix in the world. I think the vocals on that performance maybe have been a little bit too loud to the backing track, but it was a perfect performance, and Jimmy's voice was absolutely spot on. You can find it on YouTube, and it's well worth watching. And yeah, I mean, we all love Bronski Beat, and as a guitar player, what I really loved about bands like Bronski Beat and the Human League and Blancmange and all the others, but Bronski Beat were probably my favourite for this. They were a great band to play along to because their records didn't have guitars on, so you could make your own parts up to go on Bronski Beat tracks, and that's what I used to do. I used to strum along to Bronski Beat records, and as it's well documented, I did get to know Steve Bronski, and we ended up working together on a project about 15, 16 years ago, and it came out really well. One a great proud moment to have worked with such a legend. But yeah, Small Town Boy entered at number 35. Now, at 45, we had a slightly odd record, and it was a new single by Michael Jackson, but it wasn't new, it was an old song. But what Motown had done, they'd taken this song, which I think was from about 1973, and they'd replaced the instruments and made it sound like a 1984 pop song. And it was a song called Farewell My Summer Love, and it actually was a very well put together record. It's a great song. It could almost have been on Thriller, but not quite. But it just sounds really good, and in fact it came out just before the summer, and I do remember the weather being quite nice. It had that summer vibe to it, and it did really well, and it was a great track. Now, there were a couple of other well-known artists that had singles out this week that didn't do that well. There was Nick Hayward had a single called Love All Day, and Mark Almond had a single called The Boy Who Came Back. And also the same week, Lamar had a single called Too Much Trouble. Again, didn't do very, very much. But entering at number 74 was a single from Madonna called Borderline, and we all know that's another big smash hit of the year. And yeah, the Pretenders had a single that came out that was number 79, Thin Line Between Love and Hate. Again, didn't do massively, wasn't a big hit. As for albums, well, you had Islands by Kajagoogoo, which I think was the first album post Lamar where Nick Beggs went back to lead vocals. And Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds had an album out that entered number 40, From Here to Eternity. Now, if you look at the album charts from this month and the singles chart, there's a lot of stuff that's just stayed there for a long time. So I think record companies were probably a little bit apprehensive about releasing new product, because there was a worry that it just wouldn't get in the charts because, you know, a lot of the perennial big names were still shifting huge amounts of records. I mean, Duran Duran's Reflex was shifting huge amounts. Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood was going back up the charts again for a little bit. And I think part of that was the fact that Frankie had been doing a lot of TV appearances in preparation for when Two Tribes gets released the following month. Now, also around this time, Wasp, the heavy metal band from America, had their very famous single called Animals, insert swear word here, Like a Beast. And that became quite notorious, especially the album sleeve. But I remember a lot of people at school bought it. And at 95 in the charts was a single by Billy Ocean called European Queen. Now, this didn't do very well, so he retitled it, re-recorded the vocal to be Caribbean Queen, and then later in the year, of course, that becomes an absolutely massive song. Now, The Damned also had a single out, and what's interesting about this, it's a song called Thanks for the Night, and the B-side was called Nasty, and it was the last single with Captain Sensible in the band before he left. And they appeared on the TV show The Young Ones, because Series 2 of The Young Ones had just come out. In fact, if we're looking at TV, The Young Ones, there was 3 episodes in this month. The first episode had Motorhead doing Ace of Spades, and Damned were in the 3rd episode. In the 2nd episode, somebody called Ken Bishop's Nice 12 did a cover of Bob Dylan's Subterranean Homesick Blues, and Alexi Sale also did a track on it. But the Damned performance is actually quite memorable from The Young Ones, and sadly it kind of didn't really shift a lot of records in the charts. Had the song they did on The Young Ones been the A-side, then yeah, maybe it might have done better. Now, as for television, well, a lot of the BBC's perennial programmes, your sort of Sight and Sound and concerts, Whistle Test, etc., they were all off air at the moment. But looking around and seeing what else was on, well, if you went to ITV, you had programmes like Razzmatazz, and one episode earlier in the week had Blancmange on with Marillion and Alvin Stardust doing his I Feel Like Buddy Holly. Now, Channel 4 was showing some old concerts on a stream called A High Band, and it included a Tina Turner concert from 1984 and a Duran Duran gig from 1983. Now, the musical youth song I was on about earlier, She's Trouble, that was also, they appeared on Cheggers Plays Pop doing that song. Now, the thing with Cheggers Plays Pop is it was always a channel, a kids TV show. They always had a couple of pop acts, but they were never the real top-end ones. They were always well-known acts, but maybe they hadn't had as many hits. And if you look at the episode at the end of the month, Lamar appeared on there doing Too Much Trouble. Haircut 100 minus Nick Hayward did 2 Up, 2 Down. So again, 2 artists that were more successful the year before, now not so successful. So they probably couldn't get on to, Whistle, Top of the Pops or something like that. So they ended up going on Cheggers Plays Pop instead, hoping they would sell some more records, get higher in the charts, and then get on Top of the Pops, which they didn't. But interestingly, Only When You Leave by Spandau Ballet was also on that episode of Cheggers. Now, Only When You Leave is one of my favourite Spandau songs, but I think the whole sort of Parade era, that it wasn't as big as the year before by releasing True, but I still think I prefer these songs. Now, if you watched Razzmatazz at the end of the month, again, this was on ITV. It was presented by Chris somebody, I think his name was, sort of big guy with a beard. Can't remember his name off the top of my head. But again, Spandau were on that as well, doing Only When You Leave, as well as Eddie Grant's doing Romancing the Stone. And Denise Williams was on there doing Let's Hear It for the Boy, which again, great song. But then whizzing around to other programmes, well, Pop Quiz was on the telly, which was it was basically a music quiz programme with celebrities answering questions. And I think there was only one episode on this month because it was the start of a new series. But you had Phil Lynott on there, Nick Beggs, Derek Forbes from Simple Minds, Alvin Stardust, Kim Wilde, and Morrissey. So good choice of people on there. There was also a bank holiday programme called the Montreux Golden Rose Pop Festival. So it's like the Montreux Jazz Festival for pop music, but it's basically a mime fest. But you had people on there like Elton John, Rod Stewart, Cliff Richard, Duran Duran, Pretenders, Spandau Ballet, again doing Only When You Leave. So Spandau Ballet were working very hard doing the rounds of TV shows. Slade were on there doing Run, Run Away, and Roger Daltrey, Parting Should Be Painless. Well, Roger Daltrey's solo career was never particularly successful, so I think he just grabbed anything he could to go on. Channel 4 had a show called Hearsay, which I mentioned last month, which was presented by Gary Crowley and Nicky Horn. And from what I found out, Bronski Beat were on there doing Small Town Boy. Roger Waters was on there with Gerald Scarfe and Harvey Goldsmith talking about his upcoming tour. Bananarama again, Rough Justice. So yeah, not a bad little pop show there. And if you tune onto the BBC, there was a few other bits and bobs. They repeated a Smiths concert from the old Grey Whistle Test. That was filmed at the Assembly Rooms in Derby. If you've not seen that, it's probably on YouTube. It's a really good gig, and everyone jumps on the stage at the end. But on the radio, BBC Radio 1's in concert. Well, over the month you could have heard concerts by Adrian Legg, Howard Jones. There was a double bill of Fashion and Fiat Lux, and there's also a double bill which had Snowy White and Bronze. Snowy White, obviously the former guitarist of Thin Lizzy, and then went on to play with Roger Waters. But he had his one hit, Bird of Paradise, in this year. Saturday Live, presented by Richard Skinner, always had live guests, but I couldn't find much information about who his guests were on this month. And again, these programmes that never got repeated, so it's a bit, you have to dig a bit to find out. But the last programme of interest really from this month was a show called 8 Days a Week, which was on BBC Two, and they always have like a live act, usually miming on there, but then they'd have various people sort of discussing pop music, and a clip from this was actually posted by BBC Archive this week. So you go onto the BBC Archive YouTube channel, you can watch a bit of it, and that was with Holly Johnson. But there was an episode that had Morrissey and George Michael on it. There was another episode that had some live stuff, Mecca and the Bunnymen. I think Green Gartside from Scritti Politti was also on that episode. So really, May 1984 was a busy month for pop music, and the charts was full of great songs. And if you go onto the official charts website and have a look at the top 40, there were a lot of big hits. But again, because this stuff was selling so much, it was quite stagnant. There wasn't that much movement in the charts. But this month, certainly some of those singles that came out did break through and did become big hits. Anyway, that's the end of this video, and hopefully in a couple of weeks' time, then we'll be looking at June. And of course, June is the month where it became all things Frankie. But until then, I'll catch you on the next one.